What's going on, y'all, and welcome back to another Epic 7 video. Today we're going to be doing our BRIEG honest review, where of course we go over everything: gear, stats, artifact recommendations, skill enhancements, all the good stuff. And I've been hearing some mixed stuff on maybe some people overhyping. I'm going to keep it straight, and we're going to try something a little different today, guys. I'm going to start with how my summons went, ask how y'all summons went, and then just straight up tell you if he's worth it based on where you are in the game. So without further ado, let's break it down. Alrighty, y'all, I'm going to just straight up cut to the chase and give you guys my final conclusion, which I usually wait till the end of the video, and just tell you right now if I think he's worth your hard-earned bookmarks. If you do have a chance to fully watch the video, it will help me a ton, as well as if you do end up pulling BRIEG, regardless of not of what my feedback is, because he is a awesome looking unit and he does have some big strengths, which I want you to listen to later. But yeah, watch the video if you can. Otherwise, here's the real deal, y'all. If you are a newer or returning player, or free to play, I think you skip BRIEG if your bookmarks are looking light. That main reason being, we have the limited Lilius unit coming out, and I expect her to be pretty soon here. They've been talking about her, they've been previewing her, we see her animations. They even showed in one of the last Metadine updates showing like they have an event revolving around her and her lore, right? They showed some of the other characters in that episode. So just be ready, guys. I expect her to be pretty strong. She's probably gonna have a limited artifact. And by probably, I mean most likely will. And so you want to set aside some bookmarks there, because remember, limiteds always take priority over non-limiteds. BRIEG you can end up getting through random summons. I'm sure his banner will come up sooner than another limited summon banner will come up. I don't expect Lilius, whenever she comes out in the next weeks to months, to come out for at least a year. BRIEG will most likely get a rerun, or you'll just randomly pick him up through any type of summon. On top of that too, his artifact's not limited either, and for the most part, I'll just say straight up, please watch the full video for the nuance on BRIEG. But for the in general, even for PvE, I don't think he is a must-have. PvP, he does seem like he has some promise, but he's not a meta breaker. A lot of the meta units can kind of really disregard him if talking about higher levels of RTA, real-time arena. And so for that part, I don't think he's a must-have unit at all. Please keep watching though, where I'm going to break it down, because I do think he's a fun unit and he's really good in certain areas. Okay, so that's the conclusion early on whether or not you should pull for him. Now guys, if you do end up pulling him for him, and if you do have extra bookmarks, I really encourage you to, mainly because of his very strong PvE capabilities and the fact that he's usable enough in RTA even at higher levels of play. If you do have extra bookmarks, pull for him, and when you do, let me know how your summons went. I ended up getting super lucky and getting him in 110x pull. No artifacts, so I will be getting it with powder. And stay tuned for the artifact section. I'll cover this in general as well as what I've been using for him, recommended artifacts and all that. But yeah, just let me know how your summons go if you do end up summoning. I will say, guys, if you're not using Summer Break Charlotte or maybe even Fire Charlotte as much as other players, you may not end up needing this. So if you're like me and you get BRIEG, excuse me, super early, go ahead and just cut your losses, save the rest of your bookmarks, or not cut your losses, but get out while you're lucky, and save the rest of your bookmarks for the upcoming Lilius or whatever else you might want, and just pick up one copy of this with powder if you want. Because in general, at least for me, like I said, I'll cover more of this later, I don't think this is a must-have artifact unless you're a Summer Charlotte fan, or a big user of her. But let's go ahead, guys, and talk about BRIEG, his stats, his strengths, what I thought about him today, and all that good stuff. So here's the BRIEG build that I was trying today. It did have some success, and I do think this is the kind of build I like to run. I like to run my units tanky, counter Elbrus, of course, and I'm really just trying to have fun and proc a lot of these limitless sword arts. I think for me, that's what makes BRIEG a fun unit, is when we're getting a lot of these skill 3s to pop off after the skill 1s between the counters and the Elbruses. Remember, anytime you get 100 fighting spirit, we get to proc that limitless sword arts, and it goes into the enemy with the highest attack, which could be good or bad. We'll cover that a little bit later. But here's the stat breakdown, guys. Obviously, tons of bulk, because I'm more of a tanky player. But that being said, real fast, let's go over variants or different types of stat builds. Since he isn't available in RTA, I just ended up running a lobby with my stream, a draft mode or a mock battle lobbies, and I had so many different BRIEG players come through. I asked specifically for BRIEG players to come through. I saw everything from, of course, my archetype, which is a lot slower, tanky, to cleave BRIEGs, to aggro BRIEGs that are a little bit slower but want to capitalize on that early defense break. And then a bunch of other bruiser style BRIEGs as well as mine. That's probably the most common archetype. But I do think he has different play styles. I will say some of the like super cleave ones didn't seem amazing. So anyone trying to build a 300 speed BRIEG, I'm not sure if that's the play. I do think between like a aggressive one built like maybe a Falcon or Clury, or a slower tanky one like the one I'm running here. I think those are overall the best options. But let's go and look at the stats here, guys. Defense and health, I like to have a ton of that. Remember, he's a health scaling unit where the barriers and the damage both scaling off health, so make sure you definitely put more into the health than the defense. The speed is really going to be up to taste as always, but a little bit more important here to note, guys, is depending on what kind of units you expect to bring with BRIEG, what kind of DPS you really like to draft, make sure you speed tune appropriately. Since I'm a tankier, really tank down player, oftentimes BRIEG might be the only DPS or one other DPS with him, and a lot of times I can't really capitalize on the defense break, so it's not as important for me. But if you guys play a little bit more aggressive and you want to build them a little faster, let's say even at like 200, 190 speed, if some of your other main DPS are at 180 and they go right behind BRIEG right after he strips and defense breaks, it could straight up win you the match right there. So I do think that is a very big strength of his. Don't forget too, he gets free of 50 effectiveness, so a lot of times you don't have to build any. Since he has 18 base, you get 50 plus that. Most DPS, unless they get lucky on a 15%er, you're going to be able to get the full strip and then defense break them, right? So for that part, I don't think you need any effectiveness unless you're going for something specific. And then, of course, lots of crit damage and crit chance. Try to get that at 85 because in 99% of scenarios, guys, Spirit Lord's protection is barrier, which leads to an extra turn, gives you a fat barrier. This gives you the perception, and we have that free 15% crit, right? So I'm actually overcapped on crit by 8%. I could definitely drop some here once I decide on his final build, but I'm not too worried about it right now. This is what I like for BRIEG, kind of like a Remnant Violet, where he does pressure with some damage. It's not as high damage as Remnant Violet, but I think it's a lot of fun. You start the berries, you get that extra turn. We defense break and threaten some certain units with a full strip, and then any extra Elbrus or counters could potentially go into a Spectre Tenebria or their DPS and could end the run very fast. Now, of course, he suffers like all other counter units. Sometimes he's just asleep. If they have Earth units, guys, this Limitless Sword Art's going into like a Landy that did come up because I was early picking BRIEG. Not very fun when he misses. His artifact could potentially help with that, but it's still, you know, you still have a decent shot of missing. But yeah, that's the kind of style we're going to rock him on this Bruiser build. So to quickly recap, you can either use BRIEG as a more aggressive opener with defense breaks, or you can build him as a counter Elbrus style tankier unit that will try to just proc a lot of skill 1s that lead back into the skill 3. Whatever you play, guys, I think just pick him carefully. Remember, he is an ice unit, and even with his artifact, you don't want to go against too many earth units as well. And then also be careful because a lot of players, because of ML Landy right now, have anti-counter setups ready to go, like Rowana, Lionheart, things like that. So be prepared for them to punish you if you do end up going the counter set route. Skill enhancements. Go ahead and just max out the skill 3. This thing is extra important because you will be getting more than one usually in a game because of the synergy with the skill 1, proccing it again. I think skill 1 is also very important. We want him to do damage. We don't want him to be ignorable, which is a thing that a lot of knights end up, especially on counter Elbrus, end up being is ignorable. So make sure you max out the skill 1 as well if you have Molas. Last thing, or the third priority, is probably the barrier because it's really good even without skill enhancements. Obviously, extra barrier strength, especially when it's 10%, is good. But if you have to skip, go ahead and, you know, build up the skill 2 last. I think put some offensive pressure on first with the skill 1, and the skill 3 being the highest priority, obviously. Now, in terms of artifacts, guys, I actually was mentioning at the start, I want to open up his artifact and talk about that first. Obviously, Elbrus is nice, especially if you build him on counter. Gives him more opportunities to build up that skill 3, but you are playing a heavy RNG game where if you're unlucky, he could just end up being asleep. His artifact, I think, is good for him as well, especially if you want to be more versatile. It gives you extra defense pen, and if you are fighting earth units, you know, will lower that chance of missing from 50 to around 30%, depending on what you're fighting. Other than that, though, guys, I don't think this is a must-have artifact. So if you're like me, you end up getting BRIEG early, just pick up one with powder if you have some extra available. Otherwise, if you're not playing Summer Break Charlotte or maybe Fire Charlotte, I don't think there's any use for this artifact for most knights. Or not any use, but other knights have higher priority artifacts. Like, look at Karina, look at Senya, they want their own artifacts. If you look at units like Bellion and Landy, they usually want things like Elbrus. Other mitigation knights are going to want Aureus or Adamant. There's just so many other knight artifacts that are already established and are good for different roles. And last case scenario is, guys, if you need some extra hit chance for your knight, I know this gives defense pen, but you can always just end up running Symbol of Unity for units like Charlotte. So unless you need like an extra spot for your Symbol of Unity and you're running Summer Break Charlotte, don't sweat too much on missing out on this. Otherwise, just pick up one copy in case you end up needing it later. All right, guys. So in closing, BRIEG is an awesome looking unit that could end up being one of the best in slot PvE powerhouses. Now, if you already are having most of your PvE on lock, you're already using like Fire Cecilia or a different knight, I don't think you really need BRIEG because PvE has a lot of options available. I think that's a beautiful part of the game. You don't ever need specific units for most PvE scenarios, so don't break the bank just for that. But if you want to, level up your PvE game, if you think he looks cool, you think his animations are awesome like I do, he's also decent enough for RTA, Arenas, and Guild Wars, so you could pick him there too. Ultimately, since he's not limited, he's not a must-pull. I don't think even if he was limited, I don't think he's a meta-breaker, meta-defining unit by any means, and instead, save your bookmarks for the upcoming Lilius, okay? Remember though, guys, this is a video game, so try to play things that, even if they're not amazing, if you just like them, that's where you're going to be getting your enjoyment from. But at the same time, if you are an efficient player, try to opt for limiteds first. All right, let's go ahead and close things out there, guys. Thank you so much, as always, for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out, guys.